So we are ready to begin. And this is a UUFE only service. Chestertown is not with us today, and we'll try to reflect the service as we're the most familiar with it there. So we will begin today with a recording of Spirit of Life. And as Ellen and I were preparing today, this is the recording that she did the very first week we had virtual services. So in our library, we have this version from March 2020. Dave, if you could screen share, it would be great.
Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice, roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about uncertainty and how our faith comes forward for us in times of uncertainty. So it does bring that question, are you new or have you been around for a while and have questions about Unitarian Universalism and what is at the core of our faith? Because that is actually part of our message today. And I want to lift up in our welcome today the work of our member services group. The member services group is the group long headed by Carol Meredith, who stepped back now, and Rita, Mary Mistrangelo, and Jane Terraby are meeting and considering, do we have enough information out there? If you've been out there as a friend for a while and you're thinking of membership, are you ready? What does that mean? If you're a visitor and you have questions about the faith, are you getting some of the answers you need? Because I just hope that you do reach out and let us know your questions or let us know where you are in that path as we go forward. So we begin our service today with a chalice lighting. These chalice lighting words. In these cold days of winter, we gather ourselves to light the fire, to warm our spirits, to kindle the flame of love and of hope. So our opening hymn today is one that actually a lot of our children know. It's Peace Like a River, and gratitude to Ampersand, to Beth and Dick, Dave, and Topher for this music.
I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, love like an ocean, love like an ocean in my soul. like a river in my soul. I got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul.
We thought we'd wake everybody up as we got started here. I invite everyone now, in whatever your space is, to join in saying the covenant of our fellowship. In just a moment, you're going to see the words come up on your screen so that they're sinking deep within all of us. At the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Easton, we seek to nurture spiritual and intellectual growth for all ages and to be actively involved in community outreach and service, cherishing diversity and celebrating our oneness with all humanity. We covenant to support each other in the spirit of compassion, respect, and love. Thank you. Thanks for those folks that have said those words for so many years. So we next have a little bit of a non-traditional segment of the service, but in the spirit of energy and in the spirit of members having an idea that they want to implement. Gratitude here to Liz and Steve Parks, who had a little message for us as we start the new year. And gratitude for Bojana for filming them and making the video possible. So we've got, Dave's got all his screen sharing here right at the beginning. So we share now a message from Liz and Steve Parks.
So how are your New Year's resolutions coming along?
Diet's never worked for me, if that's what you mean. How about you?
Who says I need to diet? I've resolved instead not to watch TV news until after the midterm elections.
I see you recorded Rachel Maddow and Sean Hannity at the same hour last night.
I'm trying to get a bipartisan handle on insurrection before I go cold turkey. Besides, when was the last time you kept a resolution?
I once resolved to break up with my old college girlfriend, but I never seemed to find the right moment. That was before Paul Simon did 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Anyway, we were still together until on the 4th of July, she dumped me.
Well, here's a resolution I'm sure we could keep together.
Well, you know, we stopped smoking decades ago.
No, I'm talking about a resolution we can fulfill right now. I've even written up our very own pledge card.
What pledge? We're old enough that we've given up most of our vices.
Forget all that. How about resolving to pledge our support for the UU Fellowship all through 2022-23? Today, our Social Security benefit just went up 6% a month, and our kids each got a raise. So we won't need to bail them out again this year.
Hallelujah, and pass the checkbook.
So thank you, Steve and Liz, for implementing an idea. And what I love about that idea of, they had this idea for the skit, is we are not in the middle of the pledge drive right now, but they're thinking about the fellowship and they're thinking about what they're going to do with that 6%. We could take it all, whatever works. But I think that is how we build community at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Easton, is when you have an idea, we can support you as we make that happen. And gratitude to Liz and Steve for their long support of our fellowship from relatively new members, but they've been here a while now. So thank you. I invite us now into a time of reflection, a time of centering. This reading is called Letting Go of Certainty by Reverend Rebecca Coppola. On the renewal of the self by letting go of expectation and judgment, let go of the idea that you know what breathing should feel like. Just notice the breath as it moves in and out of the body. Let go of certainty. Be with your breath as it is. Allow openness. Allow curiosity. Notice the mind, each thought that arises. Allow openness. Don't judge your mind or your experience. Be loving in your curiosity about each thought. Let go of certainty. Let go of any idea about what you should be thinking, accepting your thoughts exactly as they are. Be with yourself as you are. Be curious about who you are. Love how you are in the world. And now gently take a breath. Maybe it's even a big sigh, and re-enter the present moment, the stream of your life. We take this moment to reflect about the many ways we want predictability, the many ways we want control. And we let that set aside for a moment. Spirit of life and love, we come together in gratitude to be together this morning. We come bringing all of our joys, our sorrows, our questions, and our concerns into this holy and sacred space. We have this second week of this year, and we move forward into this year together in love. Blessed be. For many, many years now, this congregation has built its fabric by sharing joys and sorrows. And we now have a chance. We're going to go to or unspotlight me, and Bojena, and anybody who sees somebody's hand up can tell me to light a candle. I'll just stand aside as we light our candles of joy and sorrow this morning. We do ask you share your name when you share that joy and sorrow. Let us know what's going on, whether you've had a milestone or something significant that you'd like to share with the congregation. I'm going to light the first candle for the realities of living through a pandemic, for all of those folks that are on the front line, for essential workers. We light the candle for the places that we have loss and grief in our lives. We hold it all in that one candle. I lit a final candle for all that has not been shared today. We just go in here. Now Ellen will offer us music before the sermon. It's a time for reflection, should be familiar. And I'm going to go ahead and move my computer a little closer to where she is so we can hear the music. I am actually going to start this over because I know that was a little distracting and I apologize. What a start it's been to the new year. We've had Omicron, we've had snow, we've had more snow. We've had all of the scenes from the 1 week, 1 year anniversary of the insurrection at the Capitol. I know our teachers, our healthcare workers are feeling incredible stress. It's all over the news about labor shortages and all the different places that we've had challenges. So we enter this year, we've had some joy at the holidays, we've had places that have changed, but we enter 22 with these realities. So I asked a version of this question last week. How is it with your heart? Where has your heart been this week? Or asked another way, how is it with thy soul? I use that question, I've used it for years, and when I ask it, people usually look a little stunned. What do you mean, my soul? I can maybe answer about my heart, but I don't know quite what you're asking. And then I watch people pause. I watch it on Zoom, I watch it in meetings. And I think the reflections, the answers to that question come out as something pretty honest. Well, my soul, well, it's okay, I guess this week. I'm relieved that, and you could fill in the blank. Or I'm troubled by the news, or I couldn't sleep because. What was your blank? I'm really excited to see my grandchildren. That really has lifted my soul. Or I'm being disappointed. I'm sad that plans have been canceled. Whatever those blanks are for you, what I think the question does get to is a little bit about how we're feeling. And then I wonder, particularly for those that have shared a concern when that question was asked, I wonder in my own heart, how are they coping? I may not ask them right at that moment because I think sometimes when we check in, we just need to share without any responses. One of the questions I have are these moments that tie you to your Unitarian Universalist faith. When you think of these deep check-in points, are you tied to your faith? As you figure out the next right step, where do you turn? So when our older son was in high school, he was a runner and he ran on the cross-country team and he ran on the indoor and outdoor track teams. And when he was a junior in high school, his times notably improved. And to be honest, when he was, and he knows I say this, when he was a freshman and sophomore, if you had watched him run, you would not think he would be one of the really solid varsity runners. But his junior year, he could just feel it. He felt the accomplishment and he felt part of a team. So that summer between his junior and senior year, he worked really hard. He trained all summer in the heat of DC, and that fall of his senior year started out really well. He went to a few meets and did fine, and then one evening, our high school senior came down to the living room. It was right before I thought he would be going to bed, and he looked absolutely panicked. Pain in his leg, he shared. Maybe a stress fracture. all the training, all that camaraderie, everything that he had been working for all felt at risk for him in that moment. And by the next day, we were sorting out our options in the middle of an orthopedic office. I sometimes have trouble explaining as a minister, what is the meaning of life? What does it mean when we find meaning together, when we go on this journey and we search for meaning? In our son's example, it was clear. Meaning in his life was intertwined with running. It mattered to him in a really, really deep way. And you could see in his eyes how deeply it was as he sat there as this young adult in a doctor's office, and they worked out his training plan and how he was going to heal from this injury. So I think back, how did my son work through that? What was the way that he was coping? Clearly, we had medical intervention. We were incredibly privileged. We had all the resources that way we could figure out. He was on a solid team. There were team trainers. But I'm wondering, how did my son deal with his bruised soul, his fear, his frustration? Clearly, he had support of his family and friends, and I'm sure there was extra playing of video games. And I would like to imagine that he turned to his Unitarian Universalist faith for comfort and reassurance and wisdom. That's what I hope people do with faith, but this was likely not the case. He was raised Unitarian, but he was a 17-year-old kid. So today we come here together. We are an intentional Unitarian Universalist group that tries to make meaning in life together. I hope that in times of challenge, we turn to our faith, our congregation. I don't even know, we're going to talk a little bit about that today, what that quite means. But I hope we think of our faith as a resource when we need to sort out what matters the most to us, when we figure out what needs to be gently left behind, and when we need to discern our next right step. But here's, folks, where it gets a little messy in Unitarian Universalist land, or it can. Our faith tradition as a general matter has very few easy ways. We don't have easy ways that we can just grab onto one handle and say, that's where we're going to turn. That's where I'm going to go to lighten my burden. This is my place of grabbing on. In some traditions, and for some Unitarian Universalists, a very simple question. God, what do you have to say here? Serves just such a role. And for God here, I just ask you to picture the largest of anything you can imagine, a source of energy, a vision of light, a center of good, something that everything that ever has been, it will be, or maybe God, that still small voice within. Imagine a turn that might include in your faith something like, God, what reassurance do you have for me now? Where might I need to stretch? Where might I need to be nudged back? I think what I'm hoping we can consider is there some simple question for you that helps you alter your struggle in that moment? Is there a simple reminder that we don't need to go through the struggle alone, some way to hinge into that moment? It sounds so elegant, but the reality is with Unitarian Universalism, there is a twist. We do come together to make meaning out of life's journeys, but we do so not assuming, we explicitly do not assume there is one question that will work for all. We assume, we know our faith tells us that there is not one source of all wisdom or source of strength that works in the same way for everyone. So when I ask folks, what are the Unitarian Universalist tenets that are most helpful to you? What is the most assuring or the most provocative, especially in times of trouble? I do get back blank stares, and rightfully so. We do have our sources and our principles. Usually we state the 7 principles, and then below them in the hymnal or different places you'll see, and we are grounded in Jewish and Christian traditions. We are grounded in the wisdom of others, prophetic voices, all sorts of things in the world's religions. But the principle I want to talk a little bit today is this one. It's our 4th principle. And buried there, that principle declares that we will affirm and promote a responsible search for truth and meaning. So in between the affirming and promoting the inherent worth and dignity of all and the 7th principle of being all interconnected, there is something that says we will actually have a way that we find what makes meaning for us. There's something implicit here that's a little hard, that it means you've done the work and you will continue to do the work to sort that out. Writing about this principle, Reverend Paige Getty from Columbia, Maryland, she notes this: as responsible religious seekers, we recognized we are privileged to be free, to have the resources to pursue life beyond mere survival, and to continually search for truth and meaning. This privilege calls us not to be isolated and self-centered and not believe that our single perspective trumps all others, but rather to be humble, to be open to the great mysteries of truth and meaning that life offers. She continues, as a faith tradition, Unitarian Universalism makes sacred the right and responsibility to engage in this free and responsible quest as an act of religious devotion. Institutionally, Unitarian Universalism has left open the questions of what truth and meaning are, acknowledging that different folks will come to different insights. What I want you to hear there is that is a really, really long answer of what Unitarian Universalist says about our faith, and it presumes a whole bunch of homework has been done. Periodically, we do that homework by offering our Build Your Own Theology class. We may do it again this spring. And we read together and we study together, and we have lots of quotes during sermons and guest ministers. But it takes a while to distill it down to what's in your heart. When I was in seminary, I had to write something called a credo paper. And a credo paper is sort of isolating what it is you believe, what your values are, and how you're going to live those values out. And I'd be happy to share my answer. What I do want to share is when I looked back at that statement for me as I was writing this sermon, it was really helpful for me to remember I had done that homework, and I knew for me what were grounding places. But I'll be honest, when we start 2022 and we think about how we're going to make meaning this year, sometimes this homework just feels too much. We need a simple way to access our faith. We need confidence that we can turn to the heart of Unitarian Universalism in a really basic way. Maybe not all the same way. Actually, for sure, it's not going to all be the same way. Our souls need options, but these long answers are often just not that helpful. So I challenge you. I offer you that opportunity. Maybe you can find one question. A couple options that you might think about is something like, where is love calling me today? Maybe that's the sticky for your refrigerator. Why am I doing this alone? You can think of alone sometimes as not reaching out to your friends, family, congregants, or maybe not reaching up to some source, some understanding of something greater than self. Maybe it's a simple question like, what will point me to good, or who? Maybe something like, what does my soul need most right now? And we, of course, are open to God. What do you have to say today? Are there times like this that you want to lay down that burden and lighten your load? What are the points on your compass, your Unitarian Universalist compass, that will remind you to look beyond self, that help you consider concerns of the wider and hopefully more supportive perspective? It's helpful to have some sort of a synthesis, and I just want to point out that in almost every case, in all those cases, it was a question that we started with. The German poet Rainer Melke, writing in the early 20th century, he offered these words to a young man that he was mentoring. I want to beg you, as much as I can, dear sir, to be patient to all that is unsolved in your heart, and to try to love the questions themselves like locked rooms and like books that are written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers, which cannot be given to you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant stay into the answer. It's that encouragement to have a question at our grounding. And then we search for this authentic response. There may not be a relief in as much as we might think in the solution, but in the question. Because when we're looking for that control, we're looking for the quick answer, it's probably not where those deeper questions will take us. In her book, After the Good News, which is by Reverend Nancy MacDonald Ladd, and we had her play, we listened to her General Assembly survey, I think it was about 5 years ago on New Year's Day. She invites us to do this honest search as we do our work on truth and meaning and try to come up with our own synthesis, to do it honestly. And she reminds us that our Unitarian Universalist faith is okay with uncertainty. She, in fact, cautions against any blind optimism. She shares this: optimism is a preordained narrative. It's an assertion that the scales have already tipped toward triumph. She sees that hope is different. Like faith, hope is the exact opposite of certainty. It does not presume an outcome for good or for ill. It lies in that waiting moment when a tug from both directions is not yet resolved, and when many things, many great things, are still possible. It moves in humble spaces that open when we allow ourselves to be uncertain and thus not fully self-contained. It is the possibility, not the inevitability, of a better way. There is that thread as we search for meaning, for being part of a greater whole. Reverend Ladd's words, to be uncertain is thus to be not fully self-contained. So I've reflected on all these pieces about our son when he came down and he thought he was injured. His first step was to try to not, it probably wasn't his first step, but the one he was at that moment was to try not to tackle this injury alone, to not tough it out. And I think that's hard for a 17-year-old. Likely there was relief that he found in that first reaching out. Maybe there was some surrender in just saying that he needed to talk, that he needed some help. Maybe there was some claiming of his own agency as he faced the choices in that moment. Maybe it was actually a version of faith, a leaning into what he could trust. So our fourth principle, my friends, invites us into a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. It's one that opens many doors. It's a path where we may choose to lean into the mystery, to the questions. And it's good to have some short version of our search handy, of where we're going to start to lean in times of stress, our go-to question in our back pocket. And it's good to use these same questions as we check in with one another. So maybe the question, how is it with thy soul? Or where is love calling me today? Is that simple path. Simple questions that will take us a long way when we remember to ask, when we remember to go slightly beyond what we can see right in front of ourselves. May it be so as we enter 22, and blessed be. We now have music, and Dave will screen share that, our closing hymn, and then we will have announcements and a couple other things to share with you. Thank you, Ellen. And thank you, Dave. That was a lot of screen sharing in a service. Thank you. We now have a chance to do announcements. I do want to remind folks that the congregation exists on your generosity. So pledges using the donate button, whatever works for you, is wonderful. Lee Marquez, are you, I don't know if Lee was on, she had board announcements today. We did have one announcement that I did see. Let me find where I did print it out. We do have a reminder from Tom Arnold that we've started the budget process. And the budget process can be sort of a technical administrative thing, but I think the congregation is doing an amazing job of considering the budget process is the questions that we need to live into about our values. So it's a we've worked out some core assumptions for the budget, and now each of the various groups and teams and committees have questions in from predominantly Rob Todd and the other folks in finance. And it will work through a process to figure out a budget, and at the same time, we will be starting our stewardship campaign to gather the commitments from the congregation in late February. And it's just an incredibly important process, and Tom wanted to make sure we had mentioned that today. Is there anybody else who has any announcements they would like to make, any important things that are getting started? It is so good to see everybody here. We will, it's a chance for the fellowship to gather for a short coffee hour afterwards, and a chance to reflect on your searches for truth and meaning, or just to share stories about whether you have a spiritual question. So pushing the chalice, and then we will have our postlude music. Let our lives be a prayer that waters our dry souls, that mends broken hearts, that refuses to be terrorized, that seeks the world's beauty and carries us through its storms. Words by Reverend Joel Miller. Go in peace, go in love, go knowing love surrounds you wherever you may go.